If you think you don't have a story, your story is too painful that you don't even want to tell it to yourself. Hey, this is Iman Agai, the founder of Success Road Academy and the creator of Ultimate Course Formula. Today I am on the Marketer's Cruise, and last night I was sitting with some of the attendees of the Marketer's Cruise. We have about 500 marketers here, and I was sitting with some of the attendees of one of my talks, and a very interesting question came up. Some of them asked me, Iman, you have such great story in your life. How did you find your story? And this is actually a really important question. A lot of people ask me, Iman, how do you have these amazing stories that you always talk about on the stage, on like one of my conversations? And here's the thing. I actually never knew my story. And always I thought, like, I don't have any story. I lived a very regular life, and I always was happy in my life and was very, like, kind of good. And I think many people actually that are watching this video feel the same way. They feel like, okay, you know, I didn't have any like significant story. And some of you actually know your story. And whether you know your story or you don't know your story, let me tell you what. The greatest thing that changed my business and my life was introspection, was figuring out my story, figuring out my roots, figuring out what gives me the passion that I have for serving entrepreneurs. And I never knew that before I wrote my life story. Back in 2010, I ended up on my deathbed. And at the time, I had a web design company. I was not doing the things that I love to do. And when I ended up on my deathbed, I realized that I don't want to die as a web designer and as a person who has not made a big impact in the world. Now, I don't know why on my deathbed that was what I was thinking, right? I didn't know at the point. But I just knew that the fear of not making a big impact in the world was bigger fear for me than dying at that point. So when I survived my deathbed, I started doing some introspection. I'm like, okay, you know what? I want to understand what living true to my life purpose is. So I started searching for my life purpose. And in 2012, I went through this workshop that during this event, they told us to write our life story. And they said, start playing your music, sit down, and write your life story from anything you remember, any memory that you have, whether you've been told those memories or you have actually lived through them, and write them down in details. Like, write down anything you remember in your life. I was like, come on, like, I don't have a life story. And I sat there, and they gave us an hour for the event. And I sat there, and I'm like, okay, what do I remember from the things I've been told or from things that I remember? And interesting enough, my story started from 6 months before I was born, when my mom had a concussion when she was pregnant with me. And I started writing that down. I started writing down like how that concussion happened to my mom. And I started writing that down, that, you know, writing the story down. I was like, wow, that complications and how I was a miracle baby. Like, I was not even supposed to be born and supposed to be born healthy. And what a unique situation was the fact that I was born healthy. And then started writing like all the other things. And I started writing down like how when I was 3 years old, I saw my sister passing right in front of my eyes. And how 2 years later, our home got bombed and we became homeless for 11 months. And, you know, I was like, holy crap, like, I didn't know I have this story in me. I always thought I was a kid that grew up in a really good family. I was very always like kind of well taken care of. I went to best schools. I never knew any of those things about myself. I knew them, but I never thought about them. And the 1 hour finished, and I went home, and I started writing more and more of my story. And it took me 2 full days to finish everything I could remember of my life. And it was unbelievable, the crap that I had lived through, everything that I lived through that time. And I was only 27 years old at that point, actually 29 years old at that point. And I was like, holy crap. It changed everything for me. It changed everything for me. But one of the most important things changed for me is that as I was writing my story, it took me about 8 hours to go through the time that I was 15 years old to 18 years old. And I realized what shaped my passion. I found my passion story. I realized that during that time, my dad was struggling with ALS, and he was an entrepreneur. He was a very successful entrepreneur, and he was planning to retire at the age 53. And when he turned 50, he was diagnosed with ALS, which is a disease that kills the patient within 3 to 5 years. And I actually had to take care of him, looking at him every day getting weaker and weaker, and thinking about how this brilliant entrepreneur who worked all his life to retire at age 53, and he's dying, and he actually passed away when he turned 53. And that shaped the passion in me to serve entrepreneurs, to build a business to serve their life purpose. And to that very point, I never knew that that story was what shaped my passion. That day, I learned a huge lesson. I learned that if you think you don't have a story, your story is too painful that you don't even want to tell it to yourself. So if you think you don't have a story, I highly recommend to you to sit down, play nice music, relaxing music with no song, just with no lyrics, just instrumental music, and start writing everything you remember from the first thing that you have either been told or you remember yourself, and write everything down. It will change everything in your life. And it may take 18 hours, it may take 25 hours, it may take 5 days, doesn't matter. It's magical. The result of that makes a huge difference in your life. So write down your life story, because your life story is going to show you where your passion comes from. It's going to show you what you're going to head toward. It's going to show you how you can inspire people, how you can empower people, how you can get your message, how you can find your message inside, and how you can go out there and make a massive positive impact in the world. And that all starts from you. You know, an epidemic in our industry is that we have some leaders that they don't know themselves. You don't want to be one of those leaders. You don't want to be a leader who don't know your life story. You don't want to be a leader that doesn't know where they come from. So go out there, start writing your life story, and start learning what motivates you, what excites you. And by the way, your story doesn't need to be a hard story, although the stories that inspires and empowers people are stories that come from hard days, you know? And some days you might not be ready to share those hard days, and that's totally fine. But the first step is for you to understand you and where you come from. So go write down your story, and then, you know, if you found your story, you feel compelled to share that story, start sharing that story, because your story can change people's lives. Your story can inspire and empower people to overcome their challenges, their fears, their frustrations. And if you have that story in you, it's the time to be shared. Because there are a lot of people in this world that are struggling with many hard things, and they deserve to live a better life. And you can inspire them, you can empower them, you can help them and support them to make a massive difference in people's lives.